From the Edge Media Studios in downtown Indianapolis, this is Indiana Issues. Here's your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz.
Hello, and welcome to Indiana Issues, the public affairs program where we go beyond the headlines and sound bites and bring you Indiana's news and newsmakers in their entirety. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, the editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Well, today, after our summer hiatus, Indiana lawmakers have unveiled new maps. There's some polling out in Marion County, and lots of other political things going on in the state of Indiana. And so join us to talk about all that is our old friends, Mark Rutherford, Libertarian, Democrat Lindsey and new Republican to our program, Jillean Battle. So let's go ahead and start with you folks. We'll start with Lindsey. Lindsey, Indian lawmakers have moved forward with new maps. Republicans say they were done with all the legal requirements. Democrats say they were done sort of in the darkness, not a whole lot of time for public input. And they also basically accuse Republicans of gerrymandering. Your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a good situation for Hoosiers with these maps. We've been calling for transparency and a more fair process for years. This is not a new issue at the State House. If you've been paying attention, this coalition, All In for Democracy, has been formed for years now. 2017 was their first year. We've been calling for an independent redistricting commission for years. So this is not a new issue. I'm sad to say that the leadership of the House and Senate have been telling Hoosiers the past week that they've listened, but the fact is they haven't. There's nothing stopping them from putting into this redistricting bill, this House Bill 1581. There's nothing stopping them from putting in an independent redistricting commission for the future, and that's what I hope they do.
Jillean, let me get your thoughts. By the way, welcome to Indiana Issues. Always good to have you here, an old friend, but new to this program. Your thoughts on the maps that Republicans unveiled this past week?
Well, you know what? I feel that if you're not ready for change or any more unpredictability after 2020, you're going to be okay with this map. I don't think that it's going to call for any major changes in our elected leadership. And to be very honest, I think that is an opportunity missed because I think we do deserve some kind of disruption in our status quo. But I don't think that you should be so alarmed with what the map looks like, because I'm not sure that it does a lot in terms of changing our norm. It doesn't change the status quo. So I do agree with the transparency, but I am aware that the census data didn't come in like we had anticipated it to come in. So I think leadership did the best they could with what they had.
Mark Rutherford, your thoughts on what these new maps look like? Granted, there are no Libertarian districts per se, even though there were 11% Libertarians voted for down rainwater in the last election.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for those 11% of districts that are House and Senate seats. And I say that because it's a very hard thing to do with redistricting. You've got so many things you have to put together. The courts, especially the federal courts, have given some guidelines on what's constitutional and what's not on it. But it brings up an issue about competitiveness. And some states, I can't remember who they are, but there are a couple of states that even have it in their laws. I think Nebraska is one of them, that says you have to have competitive districts. Now, then the question is, what does that really mean? The long and short of it is there's lots of issues that have to go on these maps. There's lots of things that have to be considered. And can you serve everybody's needs on them is always the issue. But the overriding issue is whoever is in charge of doing the maps, they make the calls on how they're going to do it. And it's going to be politicized. Even independent commissions can't avoid politics. A lot of them have the politics taken out of it. But one thing I would like to say about the maps is, and something that to some people is very important, is it's better than in 2011, those maps, because fewer counties are divided in half and split up, fewer townships are. It's not perfect. The township I live in, when it comes to my Senate district, my township is divided up into 2 or 3 Senate districts. My township's divided up into 2 or 3 House districts. But it's way better than the last time. Counties are not split up as much. So I give that an A+ for doing that. They are very, they're almost exactly on congressional districts, how many people are in it, but I don't think that's the whole measure that you do it. Are you close enough? And then the question is, are you, by putting all the Democrats in Marion County, in the upper 2/3 of Marion County, diluting the vote somehow, and it's unfair? That's the issue that, quite frankly, the only recourse we have in Indiana right now is elect other people to the House and Senate, but you may have a problem with the way the districts are arranged.
Lindsey, I want to ask you talk about sort of the political competitiveness, because we had a conversation earlier this week on my radio program, and the question was, did the quest for political competitiveness run smack dab into some of the voting rights laws, civil rights laws of the 1960s? Because if you look at where most minorities live, it is in urban areas, and you can't do anything to dilute minority voting representation. So if you were to maybe stretch out some of those districts to make them more competitive, say with suburbia, would we be running into an issue with civil rights legislation?
Now, that's a question that the legislature will have to answer for themselves if there's a legal challenge. And at this point, I have no crystal ball on that. But the way that Marion County was divvied up in these new proposed maps is unfortunate. It was completely packed. And that is exactly what we had mentioned initially as being a primost concern with districts that need to have all of these items taken into account, not simply compactness. There are other issues to be taken into consideration. And so when you look at the 2011 maps, I have no idea how they were able to make them more gerrymandered, but they did. And these maps are infinitely worse than what I thought was the lowest bar possible for the state of Indiana with last time's maps.
Jillean, let me ask you sort of that same question. Was there a way to make the maps more competitive without diluting minority voting strength?
Well, you know what? I think this raises a good point. First of all, I think all of us can agree in some kind of that we enjoy competition. And to be very honest, we all like options. I know that with the rising crime, increased homelessness, many people, especially in the urban communities, feel like these safe districts are actually drowning out their voices. I can also say that it's not something that residents just feel in urban areas. Even in suburban and rural communities where many of these elected officials are running on their longevity and familiarity with people, as opposed to new ideas and policies that are facing our families and our businesses. So I think that there's a point to be made about competitiveness, but let's be honest, we have the shackles of, and I don't want to say shackles, we have requirements that prevent us from making large changes. With that said, I think, again, there's a large opportunity that is missed because I feel that people are not, they're not allowed to, I don't want to say they're not allowed, I should say they should feel that they have room to vote for someone who is speaking to their issues. Safe districts are not allowing for that.
Mark Rutherford, let me ask you, because something that was interesting done to these maps I thought was interesting. By the way, you're watching Indiana Issues, coming to you from the Edge Media Studios in downtown Indianapolis. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, the editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Our guests on the program are Republican Jillean Battle, Democrat Lindsey Ships, and Libertarian Mark Rutherford. Mark, let me ask you this question, because obviously one of the criteria is keeping communities of interest together. If you look at sort of the 6th district, it stretches all the way from the Ohio border all the way through the bottom of Marion County, the bottom 3 townships. Does someone in those bottom 3 townships really have something in common with someone in Wayne County or in Richmond, Indiana?
Well, they're Hoosiers, if you get my sarcasm on that. But they don't. And those are the issues that are out there. I do think the maps are better than in 2011, but I think they've been designed to keep the House and the Senate in about the same type of order of the number of Republicans and the number of Democrats. And as we're working hard, there'll be a couple of Libertarians, I think, very soon in there. But it's not going to cause dramatic change in the makeup of who's in control of either House and the Senate in the General Assembly. So, yeah, as an exercise for our volunteers, a lot of our Libertarian volunteers got together and they said, can this be done? Can we do things like make them compact, have a House district consist, or a Senate district in Indiana consist of 2 House districts, really easy. So it's easy for people to figure out who it is, where we are. And we were able, using the 2010 data as in this exercise, to make it so that a Senate district was composed of 2 House districts. We thought we kept them compact, and we thought that we had pretty good division on population, that the margin of difference was 2%, maybe tops, hardly any below that, which probably, when you compare all these competing interests on what a redistrict should be, would be okay. I mean, they were very proud in the GOP majority in the Indiana House of saying, we're within 1 person in all our House districts for Congress. And my response is, well, that tells you you're ignoring things that might be important too. Like you're not improperly diluting certain interest groups' votes, that you're putting some people in southern Johnson County all the way down to Sellersburg, and they're 2 different areas. Even though they're both urban areas, they're different in a lot of regards. So these are all the issues that are out there, and what we were able to show to ourselves is it can be done. I'd like to point out, when the Indiana Supreme Court got upset in the Marion County redistricting a few years ago, I think it was around 2011, and they said, this is crap and you guys can't agree, so we're going to do it ourselves. And they created about 25 boxes in the county, compact. And the amazing thing was, it still remained 13 Republicans and 12 Democrats. And they just basically didn't look at anything other than creating 25 boxes that were of generally roughly equal populations. They weren't exactly the same size, because the population's just not the same all over the county, but there were 25 boxes. It was amazing, because they didn't really care. They just wanted it redistricted, and they were fed up with the parties not being able to agree to it themselves. It can be done.
Well, let me bring Jillean back in here, because Jillean, you reside in down in Johnson County. You used to be in the 9th Congressional District. Now you're in the 6th. Does that sort of worry or concern you? Like, what does someone in Johnson County, used to have something in Sellersburg, now it's somebody over in Richmond, over in Richmond, Virginia. That would be really gerrymandering. Over in Richmond, Indiana.
Do I have a concern with that? Well, I do want to say, I think, to Mark's point of, do people have things in common? I think we do. I think we should actually force our elected officials to find that common ground and speak to more than just one group. I think, again, we're missing that opportunity to speak to a diverse group of people and learn how to actually coalition these people and represent more than one. For the dilution, I think about, I'll go to District 1 with Representative Mervin. And here's the thing, that's a very safe district. If, in fact, we want to give people of color more opportunities to have representation, I think you take the chance to dilute that area and have more elected officials speak to a greater number of people. Again, I go back to what's feeling safe. People are not being forced to come up with policies and ideas. They're speaking to the fact that, hey, I've been here for the last 10, 20 years or last 2 election cycles, and they're not being forced to work for our voices. So I think we are missing a big point here to get back to policies that speak to a wide range of people. Here's a few: education, equal access to economic opportunity. These are things that people want to see in their communities. We're losing hope with these safe districts because there's really not a lot of work that needs to be done. So am I concerned? A little bit, because we're growing complacent. And I think that doesn't do well for a lot of us when it comes to hope and change in our leadership in Indiana.
Lindsey, I'll give the last word before we take our quick break here.
I don't know if I have much else to offer aside from the fact these maps are so wildly gerrymandered that was brought up on the House floor this past week as being a key criticism, which was that these maps do nothing to afford any opportunity for voices that have been traditionally excluded from these processes to now be part of it. And that was criticism that I heard very, very loudly on the House floor this last week. And I certainly hope that continues to be a rallying cry, especially with the Senate maps, which could not look less partisan, could not look less favorable to a quote competitiveness, if that's anything near what you could use to describe that map, which is almost wholly red.
You're watching Indiana Issues. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazi, editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. We'll take ourselves a quick break. We come back, we'll take a look at some polling that was done, see what residents of the capital city think about the big issues of the day, and of course, other politics across the state of Indiana as well. You're watching Indiana Issues. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Indiana Issues. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazi, editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org, coming to you from the Edge Media Studios in downtown Indianapolis. Our guests on the program today are Republican Jillean Battle, Democrat Lindsey Ships, and Libertarian Mark Rutherford. Jillean, Lindsey, and Mark, I want to talk about some polling that we did at Indy Politics last month. We took a look at crime and some other issues. I want to show you guys a few of the graphics and get your thoughts. Let's go ahead and, Jacob, bring up our first one. We asked about the crime issues. Crime is a major issue here in Indianapolis. We asked if people thought the city was more or less safe. 21% said the city was more safe, 63% less safe, 16% unsure. Now let's go to the next one, because we asked about the mayor as well. This crime is going to be a big issue. We asked about the mayor's favorability ratings. As you can see there on the screen, the mayor's 59%, 29%. So obviously there's something people like about the mayor. We asked about his job approval rating. Now, those numbers were pretty consistent as well. 57% approved of the job he was doing, 32% disapproved of the job he was doing. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because his job approval rating and his favorability ratings are in the mid-50s. When we asked 400 registered voters, would you vote for the mayor again, only 37% said yes, 32% said no, 31% said unsure. So, Lindsey, let me ask you, if you're advising the mayor about whether to run for a third term, and third terms we always know are difficult enough to begin with, what do you tell him? What do these poll numbers tell you?
First of all, I always tell a candidate to follow their heart. You know, this is something that is such a personal decision. It affects such a huge part of your life. I think President Biden is correct when he says that mayors have the toughest job right now in America, and it's an incredibly huge role to fill. So I think it'd be up to Mayor Hogsett as to where he is on this. But it is very telling to see how folks are, how the drop off in your polling showed. And again, this is only 400 voters. So you know what I say about polls, you shake it off and find another one that says something you like. But I think you have an interesting drop off there with how they would vote. I also think that folks aren't really in that space right now. And so thinking about who they're going to vote for a mayoral election is really not on the tops of their minds. So I'd be interested in polling numbers more close to the election.
Jillean Battle, let me get your thoughts. What do you think about the mayor? Because he has high favorability, high job approval rating, but when they said, will they vote for him again? Folks was like, maybe not so sure.
I actually am shocked at some of those numbers. His favorability shocks me that it is high as it is. I was walking through Circle City Mall a few days ago, and it's hard to see such a attraction deteriorate the way it has. A few nights ago, I took my kids out actually for dinner, and it is hard to watch this city deteriorate so rapidly. And with that, I think when you see the deterioration, I think that hope goes out the door as well. And I think it's part of the mayor's job to have a vision, communicate that vision of where the city can go and execute it. And to be honest, as someone who visits downtown frequently, I don't see the vision. I don't see the communication. And so I think that Circle City, the mall, downtown area is telling to some of those numbers. And so I can see where people would be hesitant to vote for the mayor again. And I think that Circle City specifically is an example of how we desperately need to do better in Marion County.
Mark Rutherford, let me get your thoughts on this, because you've actually been a state chairperson before and also served at the national level. What do you tell a candidate who has high favorability, high job approval rating, but is reelect is only about a third of the vote?
Very simple. You're not reaching people, and you're not even reaching the people who should support you just naturally. Lindsey, I think, has it right, where you have to be who you are, what you believe in. And my criticism of Mayor Hogsett on this issue would be, I'm not really sure what his solutions are. There's some broad stuff and some other things they're doing, but I just don't think he's spending enough time on it and enough specifics on it. And you just can't worry about whether people agree or not, especially when you have a number of favorability like that. It means the people who would naturally like what you believe in aren't saying, yeah, I'm going to vote for you again. It kind of reminds me with the Peterson-Ballard race many years ago, where crime, whether it's perceived or actual, what's happening, will bite a mayor badly. And it happened to Peterson. There's a lot of factors in that one, but that's one of the leading ones, I thought, in that election that led the surprise victory of Ballard. So you got to watch for that, and you just have to say what you believe in. And if it turns out people don't like it, they don't like it. I mean, being mayor is hard. You do it for 8 to 12 years. Isn't that enough? I mean, that's kind of like, so why not take the chance and say what it is you think will do and come up with a solution?
I also want to take a look at the prosecutor's race as well. Prosecutor Ryan Mears, Jacob, throw up those first graphic. Ryan Mears' job approval rating, 35%, 20% disapprove, 45% unsure. But when we asked whether he would be elected again or reelected, 23% yes, 21% no, 56% unsure. Lindsey, what does that tell you about the prosecutor? People just don't know him yet, or he's got time to get his name out there, because he's still got a year to go before the election hits?
I do. I think it's a unique opportunity for Prosecutor Mears to build his name ID. I also think it's a responsibility for folks in Indianapolis to become more familiar with what their prosecutor's doing to combat crime, and to also take public safety under his wing, which is exactly what Ryan has been doing. He has done nothing but focus on how a local official like himself can take these issues right under his wing. Like I just mentioned, he's launched a new hate crimes hotline. He's done things that no other prosecutors have done throughout this state. While other folks were radically working against a hate crimes initiative at the state level, Ryan has actually taken an opportunity to do something innovative here on the local level in Indy, and I'm really proud of him, and I'm excited for his opportunity to continue to be our prosecutor.
Jillean, you're also an attorney, just like yours truly here. Any thoughts on the prosecutor, or is it too early to tell right now in the prosecutor's race?
I think it's a bit early to tell, but I can tell you I don't envy his position. It is a lot. It's a big task to take on. And again, you have to have a vision, you have to communicate it, and people have to believe in it. And with the numbers rising the way that they are, it's a tough sell. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt. It's early, but it is a big challenge for him.
Mark, you sit on the Public Defender's Board, the statewide board. Your thoughts on the prosecutor's race?
Well, I'm surprised that so many people know who he is. That's not a sarcastic comment. Prosecutors do an awful lot of hard work in the background. It takes many years for the word to get out. He got appointed to replace Terry Curry. So it takes time for that to happen. I wouldn't be worried about it yet. And it's a race that everybody's going to be fixated on the mayoral race before they start thinking of the prosecutor. And from a standpoint of what could I say Mears could do better, which would be my only major criticism right now when it comes from a political standpoint. And that is, people don't know what you're doing. There's a lot of things that he's doing that Republicans, Libertarians, and Democrats would all like, but a lot of them don't know it. So again, it's like, say what you believe in, what it is, reach to your base, because your base is going to agree with you probably. But some of the stuff I think Mears is doing, a lot of Republicans and Libertarians will go, Well, that's a good idea. Why isn't everybody else in the state doing it? So do it. And as you can tell, I kind of like what Mears is doing. Even though he's not a libertarian, I think he's getting some things done that are good changes so we have a better justice system.
Our guests on the program today on Indiana Issues are Libertarian Mark Rutherford, Democrat Lindsey Ships, Republican Jillean Battle. Jake, I want to skip over to graphic number 7, the one, because this is one I want to get our panel's thoughts on. Legalized marijuana. We asked the question, 400 registered voters, 65% said they would support medicinal and recreational pot, 20% medicinal only, 10% neither, 5% unsure. Mark Rutherford, as Libertarian, this has got to make you happy, right?
Oh, it makes me, yeah, it does make me very happy because all this focus on marijuana has been draining things from people like who are murdering people and finding out who they are, and getting them off the street or figuring out how to deal with it. It's been a horrible, horrible issue and waste of resources. And it just takes time for people to realize, because most people are busy doing other things like raising money to send their kids to college, pay the mortgage, going to school, et cetera, and dealing with all those things. And they have knee-jerk reactions from their parents and grandparents. I think part of this is reflective on the marijuana groups being better about education and about finally, it took forever for them to do it, to talk about the benefits of marijuana. And that really turned people around. And so I'm not surprised about it. It's been decades coming. And part of it is if you're growing up saying that it's the devil's weed or something like that when you're a young kid, which was very common in the 10s, 20s, and 30s, that's a hard thing to shake. But those people, unfortunately, are dying or not as active in politics. And the younger generations, thankfully, are seeing that there's a lot of good uses for it. And it's not the worst thing in the world. And there's a good argument that alcohol is worse than marijuana, although they both have some bad side effects. Well, lots of things do.
Lindsey Ships, your thoughts on these poll numbers with respect to legalized pot?
It's interesting that the last two questions you've asked are revolving, involve the prosecutor. First we talked about how Ryan Mears' numbers are what they are, and also this issue with marijuana, that one of his first issues right out of the gate was to change the way that the office is prosecuting simple marijuana charges. And that at this point is something that he has chosen to focus on, and really gives you a glean into how he approaches the issue we've got here in Indy, which is this escalation of violent crime like we've never seen before, and focusing on those violent crime issues for him and leaving simple marijuana prosecution out in the dust is a great way to show how Indiana can move forward and stop unfairly prosecuting folks for a crime that is, frankly, as Mark stated, a concern of the past.
Jillean, in our crosstabs, I looked at the numbers before we put a gun in the air today, and 51% of Republicans support decriminalized marijuana, either medicinal or recreational. Has our attitudes on marijuana changed permanently?
I think they are changing. And to be quite honest, I mean, people are self-medicating, be it with alcohol, opioids, painkillers. I think when we look at what people are really suffering from and what outlets they're using to medicate themselves, marijuana becomes the least of our concerns. So I think we have bigger issues out there, and marijuana definitely is a fight that we shouldn't keep wasting our resources on, considering all the other things that people are facing and using to self-medicate.
You're watching Indiana Issues. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazi, editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Now we get to the point where we ask for predictions and prognostications from our panel to get their thoughts. Mark Rutherford, we'll start with you. What's in the crystal ball?
Oh boy, that's a good question. It's going to be an interesting year next year with the Senate and House races. I don't see much change, and maybe it's because of the Libertarian focus, but there's going to be a lot of activity out there. There's going to be a big surprise of the number of Libertarians running for office, but there's also going to be a surprise about the municipal races, and that's going to be a heavy thing. So take a look at that. I think overall, though, the Democrats have got some major problems in all types of areas right now. Plenty of time to deal with them, but they better focus on that, or they could be very, very unhappy of losing the U.S. Congress, House, game behind in the Senate. I doubt it can get much worse in the Indiana General Assembly. They've got very fine and very good people, but somehow they're not getting the word out. They've got to change that.
Lindsey, your thoughts? What do you see in the political ether?
I always worry about my friends who say that it can't get worse in the General Assembly because you clearly haven't been there long enough to know how bad it could get. In all kidding. I think, and especially when, like Mark brought up with Congress, I think you'll see some really big shifts. Yes, I'm not going to commit to saying that there will be any partisan changes there. However, it will be interesting to see the type of partisan changes. So the voices that you'll see in Congress will change. We've experienced this massive shift to polarization and seeing the fundamental voices come through in our elected officials. And I'm really worried for that because compromise is a dirty word now, and working together is just not a thing anymore. And at least in Congress, that seems to be the case. Now in the General Assembly, I would argue differently because there's a lot of compromise there and a lot of working together across the aisle, which is I'm so thankful for. But it becomes harder when you've got, for example, Indiana State Senate maps that will decrease the very few number of Democrats that are there now. So you'll just increase the supermajority. How much is enough? I agree with Matt Pierce, who said it best on the floor this week. How much is enough?
Jillean, I'll give you the last word.
Well, honestly, I think on the national level, Republicans have to take advantage of the leadership, the chaos right now that they're seeing. I don't think that us fighting on a Republican side does us any well. So I think more Republicans will step up and to say, hey, this is our chance to actually bring more people to our side who are not happy with what's going on the national front. And I think that they will. I think that they will step up and say, here are policy ideas that will address your issues. As far as it goes with Indiana, that map again, I didn't see any big changes, and I see a status quo. And again, like I said before, I think that that's an opportunity missed for both parties, actually, to have people really represent and go out and earn people's votes, because there are some concerns out there, and we need to do more to put out policies that speak to these people, to our issues in Indiana.
All right. Well, our guest on the program. Oh, by the way, my prediction, real quickly here. I pay very close attention to a court ruling that's expected within a couple of weeks on the governor and the Tarver-Kita over a special session. I say the odds in the favor of the governor and the governor's lawyers, but that's just my prediction for now. Could be wrong. Have been wrong before. And that's going to do it for this edition of Indiana Issues. Our guests on the program have been Libertarian Mark Rutherford, Democrat Lindsey Ships, and new Republican friend Jillean Battle. You folks, thank you all for joining us from the Edge Media Studios in downtown Indianapolis. Thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you next time on Indiana Issues.